Have you ever stopped to watch a wild bird and wondered what's going through its mind in the exact moment it decides to approach you? Think about that for a second. We're talking about a creature that lives in a constant state of alertness, whose instincts were shaped by millions of years of evolution to detect danger in fractions of a second. For a bird, any unexpected movement can mean the difference between life and death. And yet, in some rare and almost magical moments, one of these birds slowly approaches, looks you in the eyes, and accepts food directly from your hand. Have you ever experienced that? If so, you probably found yourself speechless, and if you haven't yet, what you're about to discover may surprise you far more than you'd expect. For years, this scene was interpreted in a simple way. The bird was hungry and food spoke louder, but the science of animal behavior has revealed something much deeper and more fascinating behind this seemingly small gesture. Researchers who study bird cognition, that is, the way they think, learn and make decisions, have found that this behavior involves surprisingly complex mental processes: memory, risk assessment, individual recognition, and above all, a genuine form of trust. That's right, trust. Not in the poetic sense of the word, but in a biologically real and measurable sense. To understand what's happening, you first need to let go of the idea that birds act purely by reflex or impulse. Wild birds are capable of recognizing human faces, distinguishing threatening behaviors from safe ones, and even sharing that information with other birds in the same group. Stay with me until the end, because this is going to completely change the way you look at these animals. What few people realize is that long before that bird lands on your hand, it has already been watching you. It analyzed your posture, your movements, the rhythm of your breathing. It noticed whether you moved abruptly or stayed still, whether you looked directly at it in a threatening way or averted your gaze in a non-intimidating manner. In other words, it did a complete read of you, and only then made its decision. That silent decision, which happens in seconds and often goes unnoticed by humans, is the heart of everything we're going to explore today. Because when a wild bird chooses to approach you, it isn't just accepting food, it's signaling something extraordinary, that within its own survival criteria, you passed the test. And that signal is one of the rarest gestures of trust a bird can offer to a human being. But what exactly happens inside a bird's mind during this process? What are the mechanisms behind this behavior? And more importantly, is there any way to intentionally cultivate this connection while respecting the nature of these incredible creatures? That's exactly what we're going to explore now. And you know what's most beautiful about all of this? You've probably already lived a moment like this. Maybe in a park, on a porch, in a quiet garden on a cold morning. A bird that landed closer than expected. A glance that lasted a second too long. An approach that felt, somehow, intentional. That strange and wonderful feeling that something special had just happened, even without being able to explain exactly what. If this subject resonates with you, if it stirs something you've already felt but never put into words, I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below, sharing what touched you most so far. It can be a memory, a feeling, a question that came up while you were watching. Every comment you leave isn't just a reply to me, it's a signal to others that this kind of content matters, that it's worth stopping, looking around, and reconnecting with the natural world. Your participation here is what helps this channel grow and reach more people with this kind of content. And believe me, there are a lot of people out there who need to see exactly what you're watching right now. If you're enjoying this journey, leave a like right now. It sounds simple, but that gesture carries real weight. It tells the algorithm that this content deserves to be seen by more people. Every like is like opening a window so that someone else out there can find this subject, this reflection, this connection. You're not just liking a video, you're helping this message reach further. And if you haven't clicked the hype button yet, now is the moment. Press it now, hard, as many times as you want. Because this is the kind of content that deserves energy, that deserves enthusiasm, that deserves to be celebrated by those who truly care about the world around them. Now, if you've made it this far and still haven't subscribed to this channel, I'll ask you sincerely, what are you waiting for? This isn't the kind of content you find just anywhere. The purpose here is different. It's about slowing down, observing, understanding, and being surprised by what nature has to say when we stop to listen. Subscribe now and hit the bell, because the next piece of content might be exactly the one you didn't know you needed to see. The community forming here is made up of curious, attentive people who see beauty where others walk right past it. And I believe you're one of them. Now back to what really matters. The truth hidden inside the simplest gesture. Most people who live this moment arrive at the same conclusion almost automatically. It came because it was hungry. It's the most obvious explanation, the most rational one, the one our brain accepts without resistance. But that conclusion, as logical as it seems, is incomplete. Think about it. Food isn't a scarce resource for most wild birds. Insects, seeds, fruits, leaves, nature offers an enormous variety of food sources scattered all around. If the only criterion were hunger, any place would do. Any person would do. So a question arises that few ever ask themselves: if food were the only reason, why did it choose to approach you specifically? That's the hidden truth that changes everything, because a wild bird's choice is never random. Behind that silent movement toward your hand, there is a real evaluation process taking place, a reading of the environment, of risk, of intention, a decision that involves far more than basic instinct. What looks like a simple gesture is, in reality, the result of an internal journey the bird had already taken before even taking the first step in your direction. And that process begins much earlier than you might think. Leave a comment. Now it makes sense. The gaze you never noticed was on you. While you were there, going about your routine, maybe having a coffee on the porch or walking the same path as always, something was happening behind the scenes. A silent, invisible, extremely precise process. You were being watched. Birds are exceptional observers. Long before any approach, they monitor patterns. They notice that you pass by the same place at the same time, that your movements are predictable, that you don't represent a threat. This reading doesn't happen in minutes. It can take days, sometimes entire weeks, and the impact of this revelation is transformative. The trust you saw in that gesture wasn't born in the moment it landed on your hand. It was built in silence, observation by observation, day after day. By the time it finally approaches, you've already passed several invisible tests. Tests you never knew you were taking. Your mindset, your energy, the way you occupy space, all of it was evaluated with a precision that few animals demonstrate. And the most fascinating part is that this process reveals something far deeper than simple animal behavior. Leave a comment. I had never thought about that. When survival conflicts with the decision, there's a detail that most people never consider, and it completely changes the way you see this moment. Eating is, for a wild bird, one of the moments of greatest vulnerability. While feeding, its attention becomes divided. The focus that is normally directed at the environment, at every shadow, every sound, every movement around it, has to be shared with the act of picking up and swallowing food. And there's more. Approaching a person means giving up its greatest natural advantage: distance. Distance is what guarantees reaction time. It's what separates safety from danger. Voluntarily reducing that distance goes directly against everything the survival instinct has built over millennia. So consider the true weight of that journey. We're not talking about an innocent gesture. We're talking about a decision that, from a biological standpoint, represents a real and calculated risk. The impact of this is enormous once you understand that no wild animal takes that kind of risk without a very solid reason behind it. So what makes a bird override that deep instinct and approach anyway? The answer lies in something that goes far beyond animal behavior. Leave a comment. What an incredible decision. What it's really saying without using a single word. We've reached the point that transforms everything. The revelation that definitively changes the meaning of this moment. When a wild bird approaches you, it isn't saying that it likes you. That interpretation, as beautiful as it sounds, is still a human reading of animal behavior. What it is communicating is something far deeper and far more valuable. It's saying, you are not a threat. I am safe near you. I can let my guard down. And in the animal world, that message is worth more than any display of affection, because safety, for a being whose survival depends on decisions made in fractions of a second, is the most precious thing that exists. It's what allows resting, feeding, existing without the constant weight of danger. The real impact of this understanding is that you didn't win the fondness of a bird. You won something rare. The perception that your presence is safe, that your space is a place where its guard can be lowered. Few things in the natural world represent a more genuine demonstration of trust than that. But understanding the message is only the beginning of this journey. Leave a comment. This changed my perspective. When presence begins to matter more than food, there's a specific moment in this journey that few people recognize when it happens, and it's exactly that moment that separates a casual encounter from something far more meaningful. When a bird begins to come back, not for the food, for the presence. It stays nearby even when nothing is being offered. It keeps singing normally, without stopping, without fleeing, as if you simply belong to the environment in a natural way. It lands spontaneously a few inches away, with no apparent reason other than just being there. These are the real signs, the behind the scenes of a trust that has been deepening silently, behavior by behavior, day after day. And the impact of recognizing this completely transforms the mindset of the observer. Because accepting food from your hand hand, as special as that is often just the first chapter. What comes after, when it returns without any practical reason, when it chooses your space to rest, when it sings in your presence without any hesitation, reveals that something genuine has been built, not by chance, not by luck, by consistency, by presence, by an energy it has learned to recognize as safe. But there's a detail about all of this that almost no one ever stops to notice. Leave a comment. I want that connection. The intelligence nobody expected to find. What this behavior reveals goes far beyond a beautiful moment. It opens a window into something that science has been studying with growing fascination. The real capacity for decision-making that exists inside the mind of a bird. They don't act by chance. Every approach is based on accumulated experience, on repeated observation, on patterns recognized over time. They remember faces, movements, situations that generated safety, and situations that generated danger. And that memory completely transforms the way to understand what happened, because it means that trust was never given freely. It was earned, built through every moment you were present, without posing a threat, without sudden gestures, without breaking the quiet rhythm it had learned to recognize as safe. This is the hidden truth that few stop to consider. The food was never the most important part of the story. What truly matters is that, in that instant, a creature wired to distrust chose to remain close to you. A creature that lives in a constant state of alertness, that evaluates every decision by the most basic criterion of existence, decided that your presence was worth the risk. And perhaps there is no greater demonstration of trust than that. But what you can do with all of this in practice is where the journey gets even more interesting. Leave a comment. This is incredible. If you made it this far, it probably wasn't by chance. This kind of content finds the right people, those who can still be surprised by the natural world, who see depth where others only see the obvious. And that says a lot about you. If this conversation added something, if it changed even slightly the way you're going to look at a bird next time, leave a like right now. Not as an automatic gesture, but as a signal that this connection was real, that it was worth the time and attention you gave. In the comments, tell me, have you ever lived a moment like this with a bird? An approach that felt different, that left you completely still without quite knowing why? I'd love to read what you have to share. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, this is the natural moment to do that. The commitment here is always to content that makes you stop, think, and see the world with a slightly more attentive eye. If that's what you're looking for, you'll enjoy what's still to come. There's a video right here on the side that complements exactly what we explored today. Click it and keep going with me over there. Until next time.